Greetings gamers, I'm Anto, and today I thought I'd do a little DM Q&A and answer some questions that have been asked over on the YouTube community page as well as on the Icarus Discord. So the first question is, how do you get the party to be a cohesive group? How do you take a bunch of murderous randomers and get them to work together as part of one collective? And I think this is something that a lot of DMs and GMs struggle with, and for me the key is making it very clear what you expect from your players. In your session 0, before the game starts, as people are making characters, make it clear that you expect the players to make characters who want to be part of a team, who have a reason to play together. Pitch them your campaign, what your idea is, what's brought them all together, and then say you need to come up with a character who has a reason to be here and not just a nebulous concept that you've got that you're going to shoehorn into this campaign. I think if all the players are aware of this and okay with it up front, you're going to run into a lot fewer problems. The next question is, how do you keep a comfortable but forward-moving pace, especially important when the party isn't sure where they want to go next? So what I like to do is I run quite a sandboxy world. My players have the option to go anywhere and do anything and create stories based on their own desires. But I always make sure to have some storylines ready to go if they are struggling. So if the players have just come to the end of a long section of campaign and they're not sure where to go from here, I will either throw a plot hook at them that I've already prepared, or sometimes even just a random encounter, just something to stop them focusing on, oh gosh, where do we go next, and just get involved in the game for an hour or a couple of hours and then come back to it, and they might have either discovered some new information that leads them down a new narrative path, or taking their mind off things by fighting some random monsters might have helped them to think about where they want to go and what they want to do. If all else fails, just give them a choice. Say, here are 2 or 3 options of things that you've heard about, choose one of them. A lot of the times I find that players get kind of paralyzed by the wide open world and the infinite possibilities, and you need to just give them some options. The next question is, how do you know when to stop or hold back on lore and explanations and avoid going overboard? What do you do if you really want to push more backstory and lore into the game? I think that over the years, world building and lore writing have become kind of a taboo in some writing circles, and it's made some people afraid of giving a lot of exposition, of giving a lot of lore or background to players, because they're worried that either the players will be bored or that they'll look at it as sort of inferior writing. And for me, I think that's utter nonsense. Lore writing can be some of the most fun that you can have as a DM or a GM when you're not at the table, and it's good to flex those creative muscles even when you're not at the table, even if you never use that stuff. But if you want to incorporate more of your lore into the world, there are a couple of really easy ways to do it. The first one is use holidays and celebrations. I recently did an entire video on this where I talked about using holidays and in-world celebrations to inject some lore and some world history into your game in a more natural way than just sitting there and telling your players exactly what's happening in this region. Another really great way to do it is just have NPCs tell the party what you want to convey as part of conversation. So if you want to tell your party about some big bad off in the mountains, maybe have a merchant that comes into town and tries to sell the players some kind of magic item that is reported to have once been used by this evil overlord up in the mountains. The players will say who, and then that gives you a chance as the traveling merchant to say, oh, you've never heard of this person, and go into a little bit about who they are, give the players a chance to maybe buy a legitimate magic weapon or have a fun little scam encounter, and then they have heard about this person, this creature up in the mountains, and then they've got a new plot hook if they want it, and they can go and find more information on them themselves. The next question is, how do you fit all the 5e race choices into a world that you're building for the players to pick from? And I think a way that you can do this is by saying to your players, here are the most common races that you're going to come across. So in this region that you have chosen to play in, these are the handful of races that you're going to be seeing most often, and spend the most time talking about them. Then say, here are some more unusual races that you might see in this region, and then say, all of these other things exist, but they're not super common in this area. Or if you're playing in a metropolis where all races are super common, say you'll be starting in this city, here is just a list of all the races that you might encounter in this city, and then let the players look through and discover what they like, and then come to you, and you can then tell them how those specific races fit into your world. If someone comes to you and they say, I want to play a fire ganassi, well, you say, here's how they fit into this particular area in my world. Next question is, what are some highlights from the worst campaigns you've ever run or been in, and what lessons did you learn from them? Follow up, do you think you had to learn them in that way, or could you have learned them otherwise? Now, I've been really fortunate in my role-playing career in that I haven't really had a huge number of really uncomfortable situations. The only really uncomfortable situation I've ever had is when I was playing a game that wasn't D&D. It was a new game, a new group of us playing together, and one of the other player characters, their character made a choice that I was wildly uncomfortable with. Now, there was no way to bring this up in character in the moment because it would have ended things. The character I was playing, if I'd have played true to that character, it would have immediately devolved into player versus player combat, and that wouldn't have been fun for everyone. What I did instead was I sort of nodded and kept quiet for that session, and then afterwards I approached the DM and I said, look, I'm really not comfortable with what just happened, and as it turned out, I kind of just stepped back from that game. I couldn't see a way, based on the interaction, where things were going to progress and carry on without something like that happening again. I knew that the chances of something like this happening again were really high, and I just didn't want to be a part of it. So I kind of backed away and didn't play that game anymore. But as a DM, I've been really fortunate. All the mistakes that I've come to, all the horror stories that I've had have been worse in my head than they have been in reality. I've thought that a session might have been absolutely terrible, only to get to the end of it and everyone say that was a fun session and really look forward to the next week. So for the most part, I've been really fortunate in not having to deal with terrible moments, bar that one interaction, and I removed myself from that situation because I just wasn't comfortable with the conflict, both in game and out of game. That particular game wasn't worth having that level of drama for me. The next question is, what do you think the most important things are to plan as a DM or GM? How do you set yourself up to improvise convincingly and not derail the planned story? So the answer to this for me will vary session to session. Some sessions I will spend hours and hours meticulously planning. Other sessions I arrive and I've got no clue what's going to happen and I just roll with it. I think the way you get to that point is really knowing your world and knowing the player characters. I could drop my players anywhere in the world they're playing in at the moment and let them run amok, and I'm fairly confident I could run a decent enough session to get through it, to get to plan for the next session. So I know what's happening in each area of my world, I know who the factions are, who the people are, what they want, what's going on in different regions, which means when I drop players in those areas, there's already things happening around them that I can draw on for a fun and engaging session that will do until I can plan something more substantial. On a smaller scale, NPCs. Know as many NPCs as you can, list them, try and plan a bunch of NPCs that don't have to be tied to a specific location, and then know who they are, what do they look like, how do they act, what are their motivations and their goals, Who are they aligned with? What might they always and never do? Character absolutes are a really great way to quickly know NPCs. I've done a whole video on the topic, which you can watch up there. And that's a really quick and easy way to inject some life into your NPCs. If all you've got is a name, just give them a name and an absolute, and you can get a lot of mileage out of that. That's it for the DM questions. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed giving my take on some of the problems and thoughts that you have. If you have any questions that you'd like me to answer in another video, post them down in the comments below and I will keep a track of them and answer them in a future video if you are interested in that. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I make new RPG, world building and tabletop related content every single week, so hit the subscribe button, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. But until next time, happy gaming. If you're new here and like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I release new RPG related content every single week. And if you enjoy what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon. You get access to behind the scenes video, exclusive content and a whole bunch more. And if you want to keep watching, I've got a couple of videos over there that you might enjoy. And until next time, happy gaming.